There is a machine in almost every American restaurant right now, and in your coffee shop, and at the airport, and at the hardware store. It spins toward you and asks you to pick a percentage for someone else's wages. The screen tilts, the cashier steps back. The three numbers appear: 18%, 20%, 22%. And then, down in the corner, a smaller button, no tip. You think about it for a second. You hit 20. That machine is new. The awkwardness is old. And the reason tipping in the US is normal enough that nobody even questions it anymore, that goes back further than you think, and it involves a lot more than gratitude.
By the end of this, you'll know exactly when tipping stopped being a thank you and started being a structural part of how workers get paid in America. And you'll know how it became your problem and why nobody's going to fix it. Tipping in the US is not a nicety. It's tens of billions of dollars a year and a major income source for millions of workers. And the federal government legally allows an employer to pay a tipped worker $2.13 an hour in cash, as long as tips make up the rest. That number has not changed since 1991. Hold that thought. Americans once hated tipping, passionately, openly, with laws. Between 1909 and 1915, 6 states, Arkansas, Iowa, Mississippi, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Washington, made it illegal to give or receive a tip. Violators were fined. In South Carolina, you could be jailed. There were books written against it, editorials, campaigns. Scott called it flunkyism, servility for money, an embarrassment for a republic that claimed all men were equal. Many Americans viewed the practice as antithetical to the country's founding egalitarian principles. The decent people of Iowa had drawn a line. So something turned a custom Americans called genuinely un-American into, by most accounts, the most tip-dependent economy in the world. The most likely explanation isn't a change of heart, it's a labor cost decision. Here's the short version of how tipping got into American life. Tipping arrived in the U.S. in the 1840s, imported by wealthy Americans returning from Europe who thought it made them look sophisticated. The working class hated it, a practice of the aristocracy slowly spreading downward, which made the "this is undemocratic" crowd furious and not entirely wrong. After the Civil War, the Pullman Company, the railroad sleeping car business, looked at this spreading custom and saw an opportunity. The Pullman Company hired black workers as railcar porters almost exclusively and paid them only $27.75 a month in 1915. Investigations concluded the workers could not survive on that salary without tips, so tips weren't gratitude, they were the business model. The Pullman Company was, at that point, the single largest private sector employer of black workers in America. 6,500 porters, all black, and it built its entire labor model on the expectation that passengers would tip. Then came Prohibition. When alcohol was banned in 1920, hotels lost revenue they'd been using to cover low food service wages. The idea of allowing patrons to leave extra money for servers became very attractive to hotel owners because it reduced pressure on them to increase wages. The industry found a way to push the wage cost onto the customer, and then built its entire pricing model around it. The anti-tipping laws all failed by the 1920s. Enforcement was nearly impossible, and by the 1920s they had all been repealed or, in the case of Iowa, overturned by the state Supreme Court. The laws went, the habits stayed. Meanwhile, in 1916, a writer named William R. Scott published a book called The Itching Palm, 200 pages dedicated entirely to railing against tipping. He called every tip given in the United States a blow at our experiment in democracy. He was genuinely furious. He was also losing, and he seems to have known it. Scott estimated that over 5 million Americans derived their income, in whole or in part, from tips in 1916. Fully 10% of the entire industrial population. And he called this democracy's deadly foe. The book is free on Project Gutenberg. It is worth the read if you want to watch someone be extremely angry about something for a very long time. His side lost. Comprehensively.
And if you're wondering where the word tip actually comes from, the TIP acronym, to ensure promptitude, is probably not real. The word was already in use before that coffeehouse story was invented. In German, it means drink money. In French, for a drink. In Spanish, an invitation to drink. Nobody knows for certain. The acronym is a good story, which is probably why it won. The English had their own version, called Veils. When a meeting held in London in 1764 to discuss banning them, servants threw rocks through the windows of the meeting hall. Some things are difficult to stop once the labor model depends on them. Here's the number. In 1966, Congress amended the Fair Labor Standards Act to officially allow employers to count customer tips toward wages. By 1991, the federal cash wage for tipped workers had been set at $2.13. In 1996, Congress locked that number in permanently, no matter how the regular minimum wage changed. It has not moved since. A thank you became a subsidy. The subsidy got written into law. And in 1996, Congress stopped the clock for good. Tips barely reward good service. Research consistently finds that service quality raises the amount people tip, but only by a little, not enough to be a meaningful incentive for workers. The incentive the entire system claims to create mostly doesn't work as advertised. What actually drives tips is social norm compliance. Customers derive something from complying with the social norm of tipping and from feeling generous by tipping above the minimum. The iPad spins toward you, not because you're about to evaluate your experience. It spins because the machine knows that not tipping feels, in the moment, like doing something wrong. There's also a trap built into the honest alternative, when businesses try replacing tips with higher menu prices, so what you see reflects the actual total cost. Customers think those restaurants are more expensive, even when the total bill is identical. People see the menu price, they don't see the tip math coming. So the tipping model persists, partly because the honest pricing model reads as a ripoff. Here's what's actually happening. The tip percentage norm has risen over the 20th century. A 10% tip was customary in the first half of the century. By the 1980s, 15% was the floor. Today, 20% is increasingly common. The iPad shows you 18, 20, 22, and the no tip button stays small and in the corner. As of a 2023 Pew survey of nearly 12,000 adults, 72% said tipping is expected in more places than it was 5 years ago. About 40% oppose businesses even suggesting tip amounts. About 72% oppose automatic service charges. Almost nobody likes this. Nobody opted into it, and almost nobody can opt out. The federal cash wage, $2.13, is now just 29% of the full federal minimum wage. When the tip credit was introduced in 1966, it was 50%. Over 60 years, the customer's share of the tipped worker's wage has been quietly, structurally growing. Nobody announced it, nobody voted on it, the clock just ran. 7 states, California, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, Minnesota, Montana, and Nevada, have eliminated the sub-minimum tipped wage entirely. Workers there receive the full state minimum wage before tips. The effect on workers' total take-home pay is genuinely contested. The debate is real, and no clean answer exists yet. Half of Americans who use tip screens say they've felt manipulated or tricked into tipping. 70% say they're asked to tip too often. The machine is annoying almost everyone. Almost everyone keeps using it. Washington State, the same state that once made it illegal to receive a tip, now pays tipped workers $17.13 an hour before they earn a single dollar in tips. 112 years of changing your mind. The iPad isn't asking you how good your coffee was. It's asking you to pick up the wages federal law decided you'd cover 35 years ago, without asking. You can say no. The button is right there, small and off to one side. You probably won't. If you want to understand why the machine works, why the number you see shapes what you spend, there's a video on this channel about why everything costs $9.99 instead of $10. Same psychology, different screen.